Hi there. This is Jo Zuleika, founder of the Facebook group Women Who Lead with Heart, coming on live for this weekly training. The topic this week is how to deal with toxic stress. It's a big one, and this training has two parts. So I hope that you're here to hang in with me and learn a lot. So let's just get grounded in what I mean by toxic stress. We experience stress all the time. Standing up quickly can give your body sort of like a jolt when you have low blood pressure and you kind of like have to, kind of deal with just the physicality of being. So stress is sort of like a human physical condition. When we're hungry, we have light stress. When we're thirsty or dehydrated, that's stress on our bodies. But what we're really talking about, the shorthand that I think we all can relate to, is the type of stress that happens over time and really gives you like holes in the bucket of your energy so that you are just a leaky bucket and you feel drained. Hi there. Say hi if you're joining. I'd love to see an emoji or give me a high five. If you're joining me on replay, give me a hashtag replay. So we're talking about stress, and toxic stress is that stress that builds up over time. It's not just those incidental, quick, sort of like episodes of stress that occur in everyone's life. It's the type of things that happen recurring over time that really drain us. And there can be so many reasons for why these happen at work. You can have a disrespectful boss, or drama with a coworker, or too much workflow, or workflow that doesn't engage and inspire you. You could have interpersonal conflict, or just really challenging circumstances, like who's not feeling stressed these days with working from home or trying to connect from afar. There can be stress from time pressure, from deadlines. And there can just be a lot of emotionalism when it comes to work, when people feel passionate or very wedded to an idea, there can be a lot of emotionalism. So there's so many places or triggers that stress can kind of bubble up. And what I'm talking about is the symptoms of stress that we really want to address, that we want to be aware of and recognize this is something that we need to really tackle head on, and it's our responsibility. It's not our bad boss, it's not our inconsiderate coworker, it's not the traffic jam on the way to work that we can blame for why we feel the way we feel. It's our job to really frontally address the things that are draining our energy and giving us this toxic residue of a daily sort of, not just drain, but like over time it can be really debilitating. So you know that you're feeling toxic stress over time if you have symptoms like when you obsess about something long after the interaction is over. Does anybody relate to that? I can so raise my hand to that, where you replay a conversation in your mind, or you start authoring sort of the rebuttal that you wished you would have said in the moment, or you think about getting revenge. These are types of symptoms of toxic stress. Or if you have disrupted sleep, you sleep disquietly, and when you roll over in the middle of the night, your brain sort of activates again on that stressful environment, that stressful interaction that you had, and all of a sudden you're experiencing those thoughts again. When you feel like you're displacing the energy and venting or debriefing at length to others that aren't involved in the drama, like when you come home and you sort of like unload on your partner or your family. When you just feel like you're having some really unproductive behavior, where you're so sort of like demoralized or disappointed in your daily experience that you start having these unproductive behaviors, numbing behaviors. A lot of times when we're feeling stress, we just want to avoid the pain of whatever it is that's bringing that on. And so we dissociate. We sort of surrender or disconnect or get really passive. And this can show up in numbing behaviors like having a glass of wine or 2 or 3. So you don't have to feel the pain that you're feeling at work anymore. Or shopping or scrolling or binge watching your Netflix. These are all symptoms of stress. But what I want to call out is stress itself is not an emotion. Stress is like this physical bundled reaction to some assault that you've experienced. And in my realm, what we're talking about today is at work. Stress itself is not a standalone emotion, but there is an emotion in there. So if you feel white hot rage at work, or deep disappointment or frustration, or ashamed of your failure, or a project that didn't go well, or if you're angry that you get passed over for a promotion or be lead on a project, or if you feel embarrassed because you made a mistake and that publicly sort of made you feel vulnerable, those are the emotions that are underneath what you're experiencing or calling shorthand stress. You know, if you come home and they say, you know, your people say, how was work today? And you say, oh, it was so stressful. That can be the outcome of unprocessed emotion. So regardless of the source of why that emotion is here, why you feel stressed, the strategy for addressing having toxic stress is always the same. I'm going to give you two kind of pieces to how to address that toxic stress. One is you got to name it to tame it. You're not just stressed, you're experiencing an emotion that is triggering you, and it deserves to be completely understood so that you can combust it, so that you can sort of deconstruct it, so that you can understand it, so that you can metabolize that feeling fully. When we don't really become aware of that emotion that is bringing on such a reaction, it's not effective for us because we're not able to really fully address it. We just feel yucky about it, and we do those dissociating behaviors or those numbing behaviors. We just disconnect or try to go around the feeling that's there. So my first counsel to everyone is to think of the stressful reaction like dropping a pebble in a still pond, and the concentric circles that then ripple out from that experience are what you really want to be looking at. And this sounds really simple, but it's not. Most of us don't do this by default. We don't unpack what it is that's really triggered us. We just feel the outermost ring of the result. So let me take you through it a little bit. Let's say, okay, I'll give you the sort of concentrical rings, and I'm going to give you an example. So the very center is sort of a belief. It's a self-concept belief about you that is probably unconscious because it's so deeply seated in there. It's something positive or challenging, full of self-doubt, that is a belief that you hold, that when the stressful reaction happens, the reason why it's stressful is it touches on that belief. So let's say you deep down inside feel sort of embarrassed that you don't have the same pedigree degree as some of your coworkers. You don't feel like you are as smart or as well trained or as good enough or worthy enough as the people that you work with. So if you were to make a mistake that touched on this deep-seated belief that maybe you don't measure up in an intellectual capacity, maybe you publish a paper that gets criticized, or maybe you make a comment in a meeting that is dismissed, and it touches on that belief, the next ring out is a thought. It's a thought that thinks, oh, there it is again. They don't think I'm smart enough, or I'm showing up and I'm not showing my best self. A thought that is sort of in response to that trigger, that brings a feeling of either shame or disappointment or embarrassment or feeling vulnerable, to a ring after that brings a behavior like you scurrying to cover up or to prove your worthiness or to make a joke about it to defray some of the tension, whatever it is that is your sort of coping mechanism. And that later out there brings this final result of you feeling sort of disconnected, buzzing with a negative feeling, wanting to disconnect from work and reconnect with something pleasurable, or sort of just dissociate in general and go check out. So if we're thinking about the circumstances are not controlled by us, right? We are in the work world, things might happen, people might say something. We can't control those circumstances. What we can control is our thoughts and our feelings in response to them. And that's like the core lesson of this first part. So like a really simple example might be like just today as I was driving to the office, I was thinking about how town is really busy, and usually it's super easy for me to park and I can just kind of swing right in, and it's not stressful, right? The circumstances make me feel easy, open, and competent. But when things are different and I need to parallel park, and there is a crowd of cars behind me waiting for me to complete this maneuver, if I have a belief that I'm not really very competent or good at parking, or I hate having people wait for me, or I feel embarrassed if I don't do it well and I have to do the maneuver again, and I feel ashamed that I'm not good enough or competent enough at driving, I'll feel this trigger arise in me. But the circumstances aren't what caused it. It's my feeling about my driving that caused it. Right? If I'm a perfectly competent, really expert driver, then it doesn't matter if there are people on the road or not on the road, or if the parking is really tight. I just go ahead and park. I'm not triggered. So what I'm trying to call out is that we have to own the fact that stress is made by our participation in the dynamic. If the circumstances didn't touch on a soft spot of ourselves inside, then there would be no stress. It would be as easy as tying your shoes, or as drinking a glass of water, or anything else that you don't even have to think about. So you want to be awake to that which is triggering you, because it's a signal that there's something there that needs debriefing. There's something that needs to be considered. There is a thought that could be improved. You following me? So if you feel triggered, it's not about the circumstances. It's not about like, oh, I hate my boss. My boss is such a jerk. Or of course they gave the project to Todd. He's such a suck up. He's always, trying to, one up me. Those aren't real emotions. That's sort of offloading what you really are feeling, which is, I'm disappointed. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. Whatever it is that's there is a signal that you've been triggered, because there's a feeling in there that needs to be metabolized. So you want to name it to tame it. You want to wake up to what it is that is in there that's triggering you. Because if you weren't having an emotional reaction, you wouldn't be triggered. Think about that. And so when you do feel triggered, that's your call to understand what is being felt, what is being called to feel, what's the emotion underneath there that is kind of waving at you saying, this is what you're really feeling. And from there, you can work on some better beliefs and thoughts. Like if you are having conflict with someone, you can talk yourself down and think, this is not about me, or his anger isn't for me, or this isn't mine to own. You need to sort of know what it is first, recognize what you're feeling before you can start addressing how you can soften that experience so that you're not just swept away by it. So that's just a little bit about how the circumstances are not what causes your stress. It's your reaction to it. And when you're aware of what that reaction is really telling you, then you're more capable of deconstructing that belief that's causing that reaction. And this is where coaching comes in. This is where you want to have somebody on your side that kind of helps you peel apart the layers and see that dynamic so that you can really metabolize it and just have it be like a clay pigeon that's shot and you shoot and it just, scatters into a billion different little clay pieces. That's your goal. Not to ignore it or to stuff it down or to soothe yourself and try to work around it. You've got to go through it. But I have another simpler lesson for you, and it actually has to do with the physical response to stress, and I call it the Recovery Action Plan, or the RAP. That if you recognize a stressful experience always triggers an emotional chemical reaction in your body, then the first thing you can do to deal with that response, the surge of adrenaline or that white hot feeling that saturates your body, or your racing heart, or your flushed face, or whatever it is, feeling instantly getting a cold sweat. These are the physical responses to the hormonal stimulus of having that stress. So you want to actually metabolize that too. And so there are many activities that I teach to my clients when we're working together, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the first thing and the easiest thing that you can do to really recover from a stressful exchange, and it's so simple, you probably already know the answer, it's getting in control and command of your breath. I think this is so fascinating because it is so elementary. It's so easy for us to access. It is invisible to anyone around us, and it gives us so much more mastery and control of our human experience in a stress response. So what I often teach my groups when I'm facilitating and talking about getting triggered and feeling defensive and having a stressful response is what we call box breathing. You can raise your hand if you already know this. But it's super simple. It's basically you're drawing in your mind's eye a square, and you're guiding your breath around that square so that you are bringing your thoughts away from the spin cycle of stressful thoughts that you're having, the shame cycle that you might be in, all of the defensiveness that you're feeling. And you just really bring it on into something easy to focus upon and sort of soothing that response by thinking in terms of breathing in a box. And so it's super simple. On the vertical axes, you're breathing in and out, and on the horizontal axes, you're holding. And they're equal, and this really helps just soothe and calm that physical experience you're having. So it's literally like breathing in, holding, breathing out, holding. Hold, hold. And if you find yourself just practicing that, you can do that while I'm still talking. Think about drawing that box in your mind's eye and making a match of your inhalations with the hold and the exhalations with the hold. You will find yourself calming yourself from the inside out. Even with the circumstances unchanged, even with the emotions not yet debriefed by you, you can calm yourself physically, chemically, hormonally, simply by doing something like this box breathing technique. So try it. Try it. And like I said, it's something that's invisible. If you're sitting in a conference room and you feel triggered, it's something you can easily do and no one knows that you're doing it. I have tons more tips like this of how you can actually regain control and composure in an instant physically, and I can teach that in a separate workshop if you're interested. But for now, I think you've got some really big tips to deal with for how you deal with toxic stress that is really kind of hooking you and taking you on a wild goose chase, and how you want to be really naming the emotion that's underneath it so that you can address it fully and really own what is happening in that circumstance rather than offloading the pain or finding an unproductive behavior to navigate around it, but to be brave enough to really sit with it and understand what it's there to tell you and what needs to be felt so that you can really metabolize it fully and not have it haunt you. What I'm teaching you tonight is the first of several lessons that I teach all of my women participants in my Confident Leader program. It's called Getting Competent with Self-Awareness and Self-Management Techniques. And it's step one to being a really credible, confident leader is gaining control over our own reactions and responses. My program works with women who are good with people, who manage others, but need training and want tactical tips and techniques for how they can manage themselves in challenging situations so they can be more effective in addressing others. It's a 12-week program with weekly lessons and coaching that brings you with just a few hours a week towards being the magnanimous, self-controlled, self-managed, inspirational leader that you long to be. And that brings tons of confidence because you know how to manage yourself, why you're having reactions that you do, so that you can manage other people so much more capably and handle things rather than avoid them. And that brings an abundance of confidence, which is a self-fulfilling prophecy. As you feel more confident, you become more confident, and it's a beautiful journey. If you're curious about joining my 3-month-long Women's Leadership Program, just ping me a note below and I'll reach out to you. We can have a conversation or even just a text chain about who it's for and if it could be right for you. And that's what I got for you tonight. Good luck with your stress, and I'll be again with you soon.